Welcome everybody, this is Because Bikes Podcast. I am Chris Andresen, I guess now the official host of this thing because I'm on it all the damn time. So today we have an awesome episode though, and I'm really excited about, a little different than we've done before. I brought on a very good friend of mine that I've known for a super long time, Dr. Sara Johnson, and we're going to be talking about health, fitness, and cycling, and everything that kind of wraps up it, and chiropractic work, because that's what she does. And so it's going to be good. So tune in. It's going to be super fun. Welcome, Sara. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Every time I ask people to come do this podcast, they're like, I have to be on a camera. Like, I don't know what to say. And so I always appreciate the fear of being in front of the camera. I don't think that's much of a problem for you, but yeah. So we've known each other for a long time, over 20 years. I was actually driving here. I was like, when did Sara and I meet? And so I was going to talk a little history about how we kind of met and where we're at today. But did you ever think that from racing downhill on the same teams for so many years that we'd actually be sitting in front of a camera?
No.
20 years later?
No.
Yeah. So Sara and I, to rewind a bit, back in about 1998, 1999, I started my first downhill team, and it was called Haywire Racing. And I invited a bunch of the customers that had been working on their bikes for years. Bob Dixon, that was constantly in the bike shop with a broken bike because Bob broke everything. His dad, Bill. Let's see, who else was on that team? Those guys. Oh, Frank Birkeland was on there.
Yep.
And then Bob came to me shortly after we kind of put it together and said, hey, I know these two girls that are racing downhill, would you have some ladies on the team? I was like, yeah, that'd be awesome. And then we got introduced. I think, did you guys know Bob through like Paul? Like you guys just knew each other?
Yep.
Okay,
Just
gotcha.
Shuttling and downhilling and
Mountain biking. So at that point, was that pretty early in your racing career then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my first race was Lookout Pass 1998, my first whim.
Oh man,
Yeah.
Holy cow. So that, and you're racing at your category 1, back then it was called Expert, but it was a Cat 1 race. So in that first year at Haywire, you were racing Cat 1, you weren't racing Pro yet at that point?
Nope, not yet. Yeah.
Cool, so we raced on Haywire for that one year, and then we all kind of transitioned over to Northwest Downhill, and that was with Mr. Eric Carlin, who was running the team at the time, and that was kind of an exciting time, I think, for all of us. I think all of us started taking racing pretty serious, right? Like Eric was racing pro. I think that was one of his first years racing pro. That was one of your first years, I think, racing pro.
Yep, that was when I moved up.
Moved up, yeah. And I think I was still racing Cat 1 for the next year or two from there. But yeah. So we had a lot of years of racing bikes. And Lincoln didn't know that Sara she dove into this head first. Once we were on Northwest Downhill, this is when you were traveling all over the place. A lot of Norba Nationals, if you guys remember what Norba Nationals were at the time. So.
The Chevy sponsored, it was on Outdoor Life Network.
Yeah.
That was when mountain biking had money.
Yeah, that's when there was a lot of money in racing. So, and you had a really good success. There's quite a few years you were ranked top 10 women's pro in downhill in the U.S. So you're all over the place. And there's some big names back there. There's some great competition. And so it was fun to kind of watch you progress from where we started in this little like grassroots throw together team racing in Chelan and Wenatchee to hitting the big stages at Big Bear and Mammoth and down in Colorado and those. So after your racing, you raced actually quite a bit, but then you moved over and started school. How did you kind of like get into, what led you into kind of chiropractics?
Well, I was racing, and while I was racing, I was working for the state of Washington as an environmental regulator. That was what I had gone to school for, was environmental sciences. And went down to Big Bear and came up short on a double, pile drove my head into the ground. My chin, part of my helmet broke my collarbone. So big injury, And as I healed from it, it was fine. No physical therapy or anything, but I started suffering a lot of neck pain and headaches. I'm 23. I don't think anything of it. I figure it'll just go away. And luckily, one of my friends is a chiropractor. And he saw me just rubbing my neck. And this is what we do. I did not realize this until I became a chiropractor. We watch people, and he saw me rubbing my neck. And he was, what's going on? I told him I was having headaches and neck pain. And he said, well, come see me. And so made an appointment, went in, and he took x-rays, kind of explained what was going on. Basically, when I pile drove my head into the ground, I gave myself severe whiplash. And as I healed, my neck just wasn't working properly. Collarbone, mid-back, everything was just completely out of alignment, causing muscle pain. And so did a series of adjustments, got some massage, and felt amazing. And as he was working on me, I'm watching him walking into rooms, and I can hear him talking to the other patients in the other room, and he's just loving what he's doing. And I was really bored at my job. I was sitting at a computer all day, regulating, giving people fines for polluting, and most of the time they would get out of the fines because it was very political. And so I asked him one day, I said, well, do you think I could be a chiropractor? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And so that was when I furloughed for a year at the state just to make sure that I wanted to do it. And after the first month, I was hooked. And
were you already in Portland at that time?
Nope, I was in Spokane working. Yep, and then had that injury, and it was not long after that. I did it.
You made the move and went to school.
I made the move. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when you said I'm doing this, because you went to Portland for the schooling, right? So you moved down there for that, and we're like, oh man, Sarah's leaving. This sucks. But you went down there. You spent quite a few years down there, and then you ended up coming back. And so my experience with chiropractic, you were here yet in Spokane, and I think it was a neck or low back. I think it was low back at that point for me. And I went to this guy that was up on Pines there, and he actually got it, like it actually worked, and it got me back straight again. But and then when you moved back, it was really great because now I got somebody I know and trust and understands how I fall. Yes, a lot, yeah. So I'm like I have most of the guys at the shop here have like punch cards for Sarah's place because we're there all the time. But and what I realized, and then when you got back, he didn't explain like you explained things to me, but it's interesting like how easily our bodies come out of adjustment. And then even on simple wrecks or falls or crashes, like you don't think it's that bad of a wreck, but really kind of can throw you out so easier. And then it seems like I've aged, that gets worse. I go out of whack quicker no matter how much I do.
Getting old sucks.
So yeah. So you come back to Spokane, but you were practicing over there after school. You had your practice going for quite a while. So was that a hard move, like kind of, because as a chiropractor physician, like you kind of established a business over there. And so what made you want to come back to Spokane and kind of start a new, I mean, you obviously had enough, I knew the whole mountain bike scene, so you had enough clientele that was going to support it, so.
I loved Portland until I had kids. And after I had Eliana, I wanted to move back.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to raise the kids here. And Spokane's home. It pulls you back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. For sure. It's hard to you go travel and you do things. You always think it's fun, but Spokane is such a great town, and it becomes such a great place, especially for families. For families. Yeah. So back in Spokane, you came back and worked for somebody else for a little while, like a year or two. Yeah,
a couple of years. Yeah.
Okay. And then from there, you decided to split off and start your own thing, which is Align Chiropractic.
Yep.
And you can find you online at Align Chiropractic Spokane.
AlignSpokane.com.
That's what it is. Yep. Yeah, I know I always find it. So, and that was on Pines and Montgomery. Is that where you started that, or was that your first spot?
Yep. Just the little office space there.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
And let's see, I had a bunch of notes on that. So would you say, what are the most, for cyclists, because obviously this is a bike related one, what are the most common things that you run into and you see on avid cyclists?
A lot of low back from hip tightness,
Okay.
hip immobility, and core weakness. So like a mountain biker that goes out, when the core is weak and someone has really tight hips, tight muscles are weak muscles. So when they start doing those real punchy climbs, it's going to come all from their low back. And that they're going to pull that low back. In road cyclists, I see a lot of
neck stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
And any kind of injury. How many whiplashes do we get when so shoulders but a lot of the overuse would be the low back pain, tight hips.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've experienced all of that, like multiple times. And then it took a long time to realize that when you do one activity and only that activity so much that you're going to have major
Front
muscle
back,
imbalances, right? And that's really what goes wrong.
Yep.
And so when people talk about, cross training or strength training or the yoga and all that, and we'll go into that a little bit more here in a second too, but you realize how important that really is for your body. Like you get away with a lot of that when you're young, like you don't have to worry about it as much, but it definitely catches up to you.
Yeah.
And even like some of our young cyclists, some of these guys they're still their teens. They'll come to me and tell me like, yeah, I got some low back pain and stuff happening. I'm like, oh my gosh, you got to get on top of that now because that's going to be a problem for the future. So
hip flexors are a big one.
Because is it because they get short? Because they just never get stretched? Yeah.
Because you're over the bike.
Yeah. And with bicycle, this is the thing I had on there, but I thought about this. When we deal with a lot of bicycle fit, we see that a lot on the bikes. We just see these tight bodies trying to get into these positions that their body just doesn't want to be, and they're just not comfortable. And it's really kind of hard to like loosen up. Or we don't have quite the advice to be like, we just send them to you. Like, go see Sara. She'll give you the proper advice of what to do outside of the adjustment. What do you think, I guess for people that aren't familiar with chiropractic or have done it but just don't really understand the thing, what are like the big benefits? What is when you guys you're getting me on the table, you can tell that I'm all like sideways walking in, and like what's the ultimate goal for you when you get your hands on somebody?
The greatest amount of symmetry that I can give you. Asymmetry can lead to dysfunction, which can lead to injury.
Gotcha.
So if you imagine your muscles and ligaments and tendons, everything that moves you, those are the ropes and pulleys. And I'm working with the framework, the joints, the bones. If the framework is not moving the way it should, then those ropes and pulleys are going to start compensating, and that's when you can get the injuries, the sprains, the strains. You can increase people's function. You can increase their balance just by giving them that symmetry.
Yeah, that makes sense, because really if you can't get them balanced, you can't really heal properly, right? That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
You're kind of stuck in that position until you can get that symmetry, then the body can allow to kind of like heal how it's supposed to.
Right. Yeah.
Instead of kind of just making up for it. Do you see, the one thing I really appreciate you as a chiropractor is just having experience with other ones. A lot of times they go in and they just make those adjustments, but you've always not just made those adjustments and get me straight, but really kind of given me a direction of what I need to do to keep it straight, to keep my body lined, to keep my body like balanced better. And I think that's what separates you from most of the people I've seen or people that I know, is that you do that and you really understand there's like, if you know Sara and I, half of our conversations dive into health and fitness, and like next thing you know, it's an hour.
We go down a hole.
We go down a big hole when it comes to biohacking, whatever we can get it into. So, but you really like you dive into things and you study and educate yourself over and over. And it's not just about the chiropractic; it's really about the whole health, right?
Yeah.
The whole system to keep that going. So one of the things I had on here I wanted to ask you about is, One, how regularly should someone be coming in to see you? Is this like I am bad, right? Like sometimes I don't go, and then I'm like, oh, Sara, it's time, and then I'm there all the time, and then I like forget. But really, it's more there needs to be kind of, maybe I'm wrong, but you can answer that. Do you need to be like routine? Like is it like once a month? Is it like you know?
It depends. There's acute care, so you bailed on your bike and jacked up your neck, then we'll see you a few times, get you out of that acute phase, and then just maintenance to keep things symmetrical, or as symmetrical as we can be, so that you don't injure yourself until you wad it up in
another crash. Yeah, that's one thing. Like I broke my collarbone last August. And the first person I call is Sara, obviously, and I tell her what's going on. But it's interesting, like, having an injury like that, you're overcompensating to hold it, so the structural part gets back. But those months that you do that, everything else goes out of whack. So now that I'm, like, structurally sound and my strength and muscles there, it's still kind of like trying to get everything. It takes a long time to get that alignment back to where it should be. So you're not kind of compensating for that injury. Your brain kind of, like, wires you to, like, protect it, right? And, like, you got to, like, rewire that.
You have to break those patterns.
Yeah. That makes sense. Well, what would you say would be, so you would say regular routine's probably really good just to keep things aligned. Obviously when you're having any kind of accident, that's a good time to get checked to make sure. What other activities that you would recommend to people to be doing to kind of keep that balance, to keep that from your body from going out, you know?
Strength training.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we are both big fans of strength training. We've done quite a few different programs. We worked with Todd from PerformX, and he's got a great one that really kind of, we appreciate that, that system of just balancing the body.
Yeah, that was the strongest I ever felt. For that year.
Yeah, I love that. I love that feeling. So strength training
and mobility.
Okay.
Yep.
Mobility being like yoga?
Yoga's great.
Okay.
But also going through joint active range of motion. So if I wanted to get mobility in my wrist, I would go through the entire range of motion in my wrist, go through the entire range of motion in my elbow. So you're actively firing those muscles in the correct pattern. And each time you do that, you'll get just a little more active range of motion, because when you're active, you want that range of motion. Yoga is wonderful. It's a lot of passive stretching, which is great, and it takes a while to get that length, and you're holding that static pose. But when you're out doing something or a dynamic lift, you want the range of motion in the joint.
With I think you've sent me. We're constantly sending stuff back and forth of like things we find, and it was a really big guy named Matt. And he kind of focuses on, I don't remember his last name, but that's what he does, is like mobility kind of stuff. Yeah. Well, let's even find that for you guys and let you know who he is, because he was pretty good. So you got strength training, you got mobility on there. I mean, we don't have to dive down this, but we always talk about your nutrition. Like that has to play into it. And I know this just from the stuff that's happened to me in the past. Like I could eat anything when I was younger. Now I have a lot of food sensitivities that really affect me. Like, and so, do you see that when your patients come in, they're kind of telling you things, you're like, this could be definitely a food sensitivity issue, right? Yeah.
Anytime someone comes in and says, my hands hurt and I don't know why, the first thing I think is some kind of food inflammatory, because it goes to extremities first. You want clean gas in your car. You want clean food in your system, and it's hard to find clean food.
It is hard to find, and there's a lot of like information about food that we've struggled with for so long that it's really hard to find where to go to and find that information and find what works. Like there's no one kind of food you can eat, right? Like, my diet isn't your diet.
Everyone's different, for sure. Shop the outer part of the grocery store. Stay away from anything that's packaged, and go from there. Whole Foods. Yeah,
Whole Foods, no packaging. So when you're shopping for your food, don't go in the middle. Just stay on the outside edge there.
But if it's fun, It's probably not good.
Yeah. Do they keep the cigarettes on the outside now? They're probably tricking us. They know this trick now, and they're going to start throwing that in there. So nutrition, we got strength training, mobility, obviously nutrition on that part. Yeah, I mean, and it's hard to probably for most people to kind of like, for me, that process was such a slow process. Like I like learning about what you do and how you're helping me. And then you introduced me to like mobility and then like incorporating strength training. Like it's kind of like baby steps. It's like you can't really drop that in your life at all in one step, right?
You have to make it work. We're so busy that you have to just add it in so that it will stay.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people just try to do everything and then it gets overwhelming and then they're just done.
Yeah, yeah.
So you just make those little steps, doing, getting up from your desk and doing 10 air squats to get the hips to move after sitting for a couple hours or.
Yeah, baby steps. Like I'm notorious for diving into thing and then I'm like, I'm done with it, like this, like you can't be done with, like in order to live a good, healthy life, you have to do that. And this is part of that process. But Sara, thank you so much for joining me today. This was a really fun conversation to have. We have this conversation all the time, so it's fun to actually like share this with other people and like know that. I think there's a lot of cyclists that realize like, it just hurts because I'm getting old and I'm riding, and it's not the truth. It's just like something that needs to be addressed. Don't live with it. You don't have to live with it. Yep. So come see Sara. She'll get you all fixed up. So Sara is AlignSpokaneChiropractic.com.
AlignSpokane.com.
.com. You can book online with her. She's in the Spokane Valley off of Pines and Montgomery right now, which is great because it's like right off I-90, so it's super quick to get to. But you will be moving in the
next couple months.
Yes, yeah. So she's moving not too far. It's going to be on Pines and Broadway. So it's like 5 minutes from the clinic now. So if you guys have any questions or anything, feel free to post those down below. And go see Sara if you have any questions. Like it's more than just cracking your neck. There's a lot to what you do, and I know myself and everybody that works at the bike shop appreciates you. The conversation I hear all the time.
Food on my table.
The conversation I hear all the time is, hey, how's it going? Good, I got to see Sara at noon. So if I'm going around the store, I know you're seeing someone from the bike shop at least once a day, probably. So yeah, thanks again, Sara. And I think next time we do one of these, we should dive into that kind of by all those tricks that you do for your life to keep healthy. The stuff you do, I'm always so impressed as a mother and you and Carlos raising your kids and the stuff, your nutrition regimens, the exercise, like everything. I think that'd be really fun to talk about too, just with it. It's bikes are part of life, and the life's part of our families, right?
Absolutely.
And so so next time we'll have Sara on there because she's got a lot of fun, we'll say, biohacking tricks that are pretty awesome. So thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to everybody real soon.